Right, so very good morning to you. We continue the second part of the free market economy and the price mechanism. And the second part is directly dealing with the price elasticity of demand. I can speak about hours and hours about this topic, but in nutshell, uh, this topic deals with how responsive is the quantity demanded to the changes in the price. Does price affect our consumption? Answer is yes. We studied in law of demand that there is an inverse relationship between demand and price. Am I right? In the law of demand, we studied that there is an inverse relationship between demand and price. Yeah, you agree? You must disagree with me. Price and demand. Then never say demand and price. Price and demand. So price is the cause, demand is the effect. If you say demand and price, then it's a demand is the cause and the price is the effect, which goes absolutely in a different territory. Okay, so never say demand and price. Always say relationship between price and demand. Okay, so we studied that as the price goes up, the demand goes down, and as the price goes down, demand goes up. That's true. Question is, once we have solved the puzzle that there is an inverse relationship between price and demand, the next question is it so that all the demands, all the consumptions are equally affected by price? Are all the commodities respond equally to a given price change? The answer is big no. Some products, they are more price sensitive. They are prone to change as the price changes. They're more responsive. They're more sensitive, but not all. And this is exactly we are going to study today, that how much, what is the, we know the direction. The direction is negative between price and demand. Now we want to study the degree, extent, the magnitude, that how much for a given change in price, how much there is a change in the quantity demanded. All right. So now we go, if I say the law of demand, more price, less demand, less price, more demand, it's a quality, it's a quality. It's a feature, it's a characteristic. It's a qualitative phenomenon. Today, we do the quantitative phenomenon, that how we measure the extent of change. Okay, the formula of the price elasticity of demand is very simple. You can see here, it basically is the percentage or proportionate change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage or proportionate change in the price. So basically, your D is demand and P is the price, and delta signifies change. Change today from yesterday. Change this year from last year. So the change is always in economics, in most of the business studies, I would say, if you want to show a change quantitatively in notational form, we use delta for it. Okay, D is simple demand, P is simple price. So what we do, basically, delta D, change in demand, divide by D, original demand, bracket, and then everything divide, change in price, delta P, by the original price. And once we solve it, we get the elasticity of demand. The sign of the price, and here you can see that I have used this E subscript PD, which means elasticity, the price elasticity of demand. The sign, the inherent sign would be negative. The inherent sign would be negative. But we ignore it. Why we ignore it, I'll let you know. But try to understand what I'm trying to focus here is that if I share something else with you, for example, do you guys see whiteboard? If no, please give me a shout out. price goes up, demand goes down. So what is the relationship? Negative. And when I write price elasticity of demand, what is the formula? The formula is change in demand. This is delta. I'm sorry. Please consider it, even though they both look same. I try to be more, how to say? Yeah. Okay. So we have change in demand divided by original demand. And then we divide everything again, change in price divided by original price. And if you know a bit of arithmetic and mathematics, and you know that how to solve the these kind of puzzle, it becomes change in demand divided by change in price, and then the original price goes up and original demand goes down. Okay, and as you can see that the price is never negative. Are you with me? The price is never negative. The demand is never negative. The least demand is zero, but it's never negative, right? But if you see this and this, one of them has to be negative. One of them will be negative, because we know that the relationship between the price and demand is what? Negative. Did I say price and demand? Yeah, the relationship between price and demand. I'll give you an example and then things will be clear. Let's say that price and demand. Price and demand. We are in 2021. So let's say this is 21 and this is 20. Last year, the price of something was 5 euros and the demand was 40 kilos. It can be of one person, it can be whole society, depending upon who we talk about. This year, the price went down to 4 euros, and as a result, the demand went up to 50. Am I right? Am I right? In this example, the change in price is how much? Can somebody find out? And if you speak, please speak after being in Zoom so that people who are in Zoom can hear you. How much is change in price? Or my friends who are in Zoom, they can also speak out. How much is change in price? Sorry? 1. 1 or minus 1? Last year price was 5, this year price is 4. How much is change? Minus 1. Because when you say 1, it means price could be 5 to 6 also. So price is minus 1. How much is change in demand? Plus or minus, please be precise. Plus 10. So no sign means plus sign. Okay. And how much is D? How much is D? No. D, original. We are measuring today. When you measure something today, you measure in response to the previous. Only then you measure change, isn't it? If I say that this year, your monthly salary is 600 euros. Is it increase or decrease? Is it better or worse? Then you will say, hey, let me see, what was my salary last year? Hey, my salary was 500 euros last year. This year, 600. I made a growth. So you can't see unless you compare it with the previous period. Okay. So what was your original demand? D means original demand. How much? Very good. And how much was the original price? Very good. So if I put all these numbers in this formula, I get delta D is 10, yeah, divide by delta P minus 1 multiply P is 5, yeah, and demand is 40, yeah. If you solve, and can you see that by default there is a negative sign? Either price will go up and demand will come down, or price will come down and demand will go up. So overall plus minus or minus plus, the sign of this thing, the sign of this term will always be negative. But remember, we will ignore it. We will ignore it. Otherwise, your whole interpretation can go upside down. So even though in theory, the sign between delta D and delta divided by delta P is negative, but for the sake of interpretation, we ignore it. Okay. Now, if you solve it, how much you get? 1.25. Am I right? 1.25. So basically, you're trying to say that whenever the price increases by 1%, whenever 1.25 in simple words mean, whenever there is a price increase by 1%, our overall demand goes down by 1.25%. Okay, does it make sense? So the sensitivity, the extent of change in demand is more than 1.25. I can also call it 1.25 as 125%. Am I right? So basically, it's the change in the reaction of demand is more than 100%. Make sense? So it means that in this example, demand is very sensitive, because if there's a 1 point change in the price, there's 1.25 points change in demand. So demand is highly elastic. Does it make sense or not? But if you put minus sign in front, it would show the, because how to say it? It's difficult to say. Minus have a negative interpretation, different interpretation, isn't it? More the minus, lesser the value. Okay, so it can go wrong. Your whole thought process can go wrong. So therefore, we ignore the negative sign, even though in theory there should be a negative sign to be in front, but we don't care about it. So this is how the price elasticity of demand is measured. For instance, can I change the colors of the pen? Yeah.
Was the result 1? Would it be?
It means it's 100%. It's the demand and price are change is matching. There is a equal. If price goes up, demand. If price goes up by X percentage, demand goes down by X percentage. Not equilibrium. There's no need to call it equilibrium, but it's like a matching reaction. Action, reaction are matching. Here, action, reaction is more than action. If the action is 1%, what is action? What is the first action? What makes the disturbance in the market? Demand or price first? Price. This is why we say price and demand. So who caused the ripple in the water? Price. So if there's a 1% increase in the price, there is a 1.25% decrease in the demand. So there is a overreaction, yeah, by demand in comparison to the price. But just imagine, I'm now trying to play with the figures here. What I'm going to do here is that I keep the price change same, but I'm trying to make it 45. Yeah. It means that your change in price is still -1, but this time your change in demand is -5, right? Or sorry, +5 rather. D remain 40, P remains 5. So what we do here, if I recalculate it, then this part would be 5. Am I right? Yeah, am I right? And now when you solve it, it comes to be not 1.25, but 0.625. Or let's say 0.63, whatever. Yeah, 63. Look at this now. Look at this. This time, the reaction of demand is under reaction, because this time the demand shrinks by 62% if there is a 100% increase in the price. So this time the demand reaction is less than 100% or less than 1. Whenever the elasticity calculation comes out to be less than 1, it means that the demand react less than proportionate. And whenever your elasticity of demand answer is more than 1, it means demand reacts more than proportionate. More than proportionate means overreact. Less than proportionate or less than 1 means underreact. Am I right? Does it make sense or not? Now see why I forbid you from putting minus sign. If you look at 1.25 and 0.62, which number is higher? When you look at 1.25, compare this 1.25 and compare it with 0.62, which number is higher? 1.25. So you say that in the first example, demand was reacting more. Am I right? But if you put minus sign, minus 1.25 and minus 0.62, who's bigger? Minus 0. That is why I stop you from putting minus sign. Even though in theory, there is a minus sign, but if you put minus, if you become very Puritan, very theory driven, and you put minus sign, then the interpretation will go wrong. That's why I stop you from using minus sign, even though in the cloud, there is a minus sign in the formula, right? Rather, when you write the answer to this question or this type of question, you put minus sign as I did here. You say that this part is always negative, but, and you can circle it, that this part will always be negative because one of them is positive, the other is negative. Okay, but then you give a disclaimer. Give a disclaimer that even though there is this negative sign in theory, but we ignore it for the sake of interpretation, because otherwise you would misstate the law. Does it make sense? So therefore, this is basically all about elasticity of demand. We can talk, the rest is all extensions and discussion, but the core, the crust, the gist, the essence of elasticity of demand is here right now on the whiteboard. Make sense? And now what we do, if you look at the slides, then I put a question here for you. Can you see it? Yeah, it's always a confusion when I share the screen.
We can see whiteboard.
You can see the whiteboard, right? Not the.
Yes.
Okay, we can reshare it. How about now?
Slides.
Slides. Okay, now do one thing. Check, do the same formula, apply the same technique which we just discussed. Check how much is the elasticity of demand in 2019. and then check how much is the elasticity of demand in 2021. Well, it should be 2020. I don't know why I missed 1 year, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. So when you compare 19 with 18, then your original demand and original price would be this, yeah? But when you compare for this last year, which should be 2020, I don't know why I put it 21, then this should be, then 19 should be your original price and original demand. So basically, you are supposed to calculate elasticity of demand right now 2 times. First, 19 in comparison to the previous year, which is 18, and then 21 in comparison to the previous year, which is 19. You know what I mean? Okay, so please tell me, should I keep this slide on or should I keep that whiteboard slide for you? This one or the whiteboard one? The whiteboard one, yeah? This you can see from the slides anyways. So, am I right? Whatever. So what I do, I bring you, I take you back to the whiteboard thingy. And now you guys know that what we did. So do elasticity of demand twice and make out the result that which year demand has been more sensitive. I mean, do something basically, you know what I mean. Have you got any answers? Where have we got the answers? Did we? Good. Okay, we can wait for a few minutes. Not minutes, but few moments. Yeah. Yeah. And I wrote here, that's very important because sometimes it's very difficult to explain, but when you deal things by yourself, you find out on your own that should we put, because when you say 1.25 is more than 0.62, but if you put minus sign as per theory, then it goes other way around. So it means that we should never put minus sign in front. Yep. You got same for both? Well, it's possible, nothing stops. Okay, so 2019, in 2019, if I okay, so I share this spreadsheet with you. So let's calculate and then we can see what is the difference where we agree or where we disagree. So if I say year 18, 19, I call it 20, doesn't matter. And we have the price. Maybe I zoom in a wee bit. We have a price, we have a demand. And the price has been 10, 12, 14, 10, 12, 14. And the demand has been 750, 700, 700, and 600, right? 600. So first of all, if you want to find out elasticity of demand, we write the formula. For the first year, you can't find out, but for the second year, if you want to find the delta, let's call it delta P, and let's call it delta D, change in demand. So I'm not putting the sign, but I'm writing it delta T. So it means that the delta P has been okay. So you can see that in 2019, the change in price was 2, which is, and change in and in 2020, the change in price was also this equal, and delta D was okay. So, and then we put the formula. What's the formula? The formula is change in demand divide by change in price, and then divide by the original price, divide by the original demand. So if I put all these numbers in the formula, then the elasticity of demand would be, I write here, okay, is equal to change in demand divide by change in price, and then everything multiplied by change in original demand. Okay, how much is the original demand? Sorry, change in the original price, which was 12. No. It should be not this way. I think I do it again. Sorry, so it was change in demand. Change in demand was this, and change in price was this. How much is this? What I'm doing? Come on. Okay, now I keep in mind. I was a bit confused, but now I'm fine. What does it mean? Change in demand, we divide by change in price, and then we multiply the original price, which was 10, yeah, and divide by original demand. Here we go, 0.33, but because it's a negative sign, I would take the absolute number, which is, I think, like this. Absolute. Which means, yeah. So now I ignore minus sign. So you can see that when you compare in 2019 with 2018, your elasticity of demand is 0.33. Is it less than 1 or more than 1? Less than 1. So is demand overreacting or underreacting? Very good. This is the interpretation. Look, calculation is not a problem. It's not a something, I'm not testing your mathematical skill, but of course you need to calculate correctly, but the interpretation is very important. But we are still missing one interpretation. That is, which year has more elasticity? Demand never remains stable. Remember, things change in life. There are many things which at my age were luxury, but at your age is a necessity. In my age, if I compare, first of all, we never used to have the mobile phones, when I was at your age. I'm talking about 1905. Well, that's a bad joke. Okay. So, but now, now those mobile phones are almost necessities. Almost. Well, is it almost? No, necessity. And then you can see here, maybe it's right. Yeah. So you can see here that the change in demand You can see J18 divide by change in price, I18, everything in the bracket. Use of bracket is very important. If you don't use the brackets, everything will go helter-skelter. And then F17, this time your 17 row become the original row. Yeah. So F17 is the original price and G17 is the original demand. And if you put is equal to ABS absolute, it means that it would ignore negative signs, right? And when you do it, it comes to be 0.85. And you can see here that even though the price elasticity of demand is, you know, the J row is where we are. So I can, yeah. So, yeah, so the current row. So J, you can see 18 here. J row is, J18 is change in demand and I18 is change in price. And F17 is the previous price and G17 is the previous demand. And when you solve it, it comes to be 0.85. So even though in the absolute sense, demand is still underreacting because it's less than 1, am I right? But in comparative sense, the demand has become more elastic than before. Look, when you compare 0.85 with the legend, what is the legend? 1, the benchmark, okay? Then it's inelastic or less elastic. But when you compare it with over a time period with the previous figure, then it shows that there is a more than double increase. So this is how we calculate price elasticity of demand, okay, in simple words, and how we make the interpretation of it. And I never planned to use the Excel, but I did it. So I would save it and share with you in Moodle so that it helps you. But if you have any question, please feel free and ask me loud so that people can hear you. So try to ask me questions in Zoom. I saw one hand raised. 2. You raised hand, did you?
Yeah, I was just confused how we compare the price from 2020 to 2019 as 2019 being the original one. That always compared to
No, it's not. No. There is no, yeah, no, we compare over time. So if I want to compare my salary now, I compare it with the previous month or the previous year. And then the previous, I compare with again the previous, you know, so 21 vis-a-vis 20 vis-a-vis 19. So yeah, so this is how we do it. Yes.
Approaching the 1.
Yeah, more than 1 actually.
More than 1.
Yeah.
So here the more elastic price.
Yeah.
Is still 2020.
I can explain it very. We can use those benchmarks. We can use those benchmarks that if the elasticity of demand is exactly 1, we call it elastic. Demand is elastic, means action reaction same, equal. If I say more elastic, then the price elasticity figure has to be more than 1. And if the price elasticity figure is less than 1, then we say the demand is less elastic. So less elastic, less than 1, elastic equal to 1, more elastic, more than 1.
When we're comparing the number that is approaching more 1 is more elastic than another year.
Yeah, so it's approaching to be more elastic, definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
So here we can state that the 2020 was the year where the price were
more elastic, yeah, than 19. Yeah, exactly. You're right. So you can see that 18, 19, and 20, the prices, the demand, and then you can see that the price elasticity of demand, then the original row was 16 rather. But when you do for the next time, then the original row becomes 17. So it keeps changing. So you can see that our elasticity of demand is basically changing. comparisons are multifold. Look, this is very interesting. When you see these numbers, they are less than 1 in both occasions. So in both occasions, the elasticity of demand is less than 1 or less elastic. Am I right? But when I compare this figure with this figure, as you said, that it's approaching to be more elastic. So it depends on comparison. For example, when I organize the exam and I say that the minimum to get a 5 grade, you need 85% score. Well, it's an external comparison. So if you achieve it, you did good job. But just imagine that in the last exam, you got 2, and in the next exam, you got 4. Even though you still are not absolutely the best. But comparatively, you have grown 100%. Because you were getting 2, now you get 4. There's a growth. Depends what we compare with. So when you compare this elasticity with this elasticity, there is a more than double increase. But overall, when we compare these numbers with this legendary figure of 1, the benchmark 1, then I would say that it's still less elastic, but depend what we are looking at. Sorry? Yeah, but then we need to have more data. 3 years, yeah. If we have, let's say, 100 periods, 100 rows, then we can make a good statistically significant forecast. In quantitative techniques, to make a good forecast, good prediction, statistically good prediction, you must have at least 100 observations to make a forecast. Of course you can. All good? So far, so good? So we go back to the slides. Yeah. So now we know the basic theory of elasticity of demand. We go further. And again, what factors makes, for example, when you see 0.33 and 0.85, so then you can ask the question, Shab, what could be the reason that there is an increase or decrease? On what factor something is more elastic and something is less elastic? Okay, now, the first factor is, I'll come back to this funny example, oil and cabbage and food and Ferrari afterwards. But the first factor which can have an impact on the price elasticity of demand is the number and closeness of substitutes. Listen carefully. If we have this marker and there is a big increase in the price of this marker, and in the market, there are several substitutes which I can use instead of this marker. And so try to visualize a picture. There's a big jump in the price of this marker. And secondly, in the market, there are several close substitutes to this marker. What will happen? With the increase in the price of this marker, X%, there would be overreaction of the marker's demand. It would shrink more than 1. You know why? Because people know that why should I pay more price for the markers when I can have the cheaper substitutes in the market? Yeah, I mean, you can talk about the iPhone. If there is an iPhone made by one company and there's a big increase in the price of this iPhone, and you find that almost nearly the same functions.
Maybe 500 euros was, but now it's 515. What will happen with demand?
Well, then it depends upon the second factor, that extent, how much is the price increase? For a minor increase in the price, maybe the demand doesn't react so much, but for a substantial, this is why when I started the example, I said significant increase in the price. So if there's a minor increase, nobody bothers, because you become so used to of consuming something and you don't mind paying more price because you have become so used to of consuming it. But if there is a significant increase in the price, then your budget can be disturbed. Then you start thinking of moving away from one product to another product. For the small differences, maybe the market, the price reaction, the demand reaction is not so sharp. But if the price increase is significant, then definitely there would be a reaction. But again, the first point I'm talking about is that if there is a substitute, if the iPhone have no substitute, iPhone is a kind of stand apart. Nothing is close to iPhone. And if you really want to, to keep with Joneses, did I use this phrase before? Yeah. So if you want to be keeping with Joneses, you want to go to a party and you want to flaunt your iPhone, not mine. Not this one with the ribbed cover, then definitely you will be more. You will not care about the price. Okay. I don't mind. I can even have a wireless set instead of phone if the price is a big difference. Anyways, so yeah, so you got my point. So if something has a several number of substitutes, then all else being equal, the demand reaction would be more. More means more than one. Means demand would be sensitive, more sensitive, expectedly. And then comes the second point, which this gentleman asked, the proportion of income spent on goods. If we talk about very cheaper product, let's say we buy some matchboxes. First of all, how often we use matchboxes? And secondly, the matchbox cost basically very less. Okay. So if there's an increase in the prices of those products, which are taking a very small fraction of our income, perhaps we don't even care. We don't even notice. You go to Lidl, Prisma, and you buy the matchbox, and you may not even consider what was the price of the matchbox last time, because it's so insignificant, it's so small. So for those products, which you spend a very small portion of your income, demand doesn't react so much. But for the products where you spend when you think about buying a car, when you think about buying furniture, when you think about buying some thing which take away a big chunk of your income, then you are more price sensitive. Yeah, for example, the food and the Ferrari. I mean, if you buy Ferrari, I wish you all buy, but first of all, I buy. I'm your teacher. Okay, so in that case, I will be more price sensitive. Okay, or maybe I become so rich that I don't care about the price. That's a different story. But if those things on which you spend a big portion of your income or your wealth rather, then that is more price sensitive. But if you want to buy food, including cabbage and oil, then it doesn't really matter. Do you care about it? Do you think the price of cabbage depend upon you or on the cabbage? Okay, not on the cabbage. Okay, let's move away from cabbage and go to the third point. Yeah, so this is how, when you draw, when you make some kind of graphic depiction, this is how your elasticity of demand curve would look like. Okay, nothing to feel scared of. Nothing to feel scared of. Look at this last figure, curve. Yeah, the figure, the graphic, the pictorial or representation of the relationship between price and demand. Demand is fully elastic This is a demand which is ultra elastic. Ultra elastic, which basically means that, again, it would never happen, but it's an extreme theory, extreme, in your mindset. If ever your demand curve is parallel to x-axis, first of all, in reality, it would never happen. But when we start thinking, we not only see the realities, we also go beyond the reality. Remember, the reality is the reality which you think is real. But there is a thought before your thoughts as well. So as I said, that one reason we are studying this course is that we want to let our horses of our minds gallop, run as freely as possible. In theory, there can be a demand which is ultra sensitive, hyper sensitive to the price. The price finds a tiny mini decline, the demand can rise up to infinity. And if the tiny mini increase in the price, demand becomes zero. Can you visualize the picture? That something is so sensitive to the price change that if there's a minor increase in the price, nobody wants to buy it. And if there's a minor decrease in the price, the whole world is buying it. If something like this happens, then the shape of the demand curve would be like this, right? And don't worry about the supply curve. This is inbuilt. It doesn't make any sense. But do you get my point? The other extreme is when the demand curve is vertical to x-axis. Vertical. Vertical means what? Demand curve is parallel, basically, to what? To the y-axis, right? Here, the price goes down, the price goes up, demand is unaffected. So the other extreme could be that the demand is ultra inelastic. Demand is insensitive. Demand is non-reactive altogether. No reaction, whatever is the price. Even though it sounds unrealistic, but I find it a little bit more realistic than this one. Look at the price. Look at the price. Look at the consumption of some staple food, shelter, and clothing, right? So no matter how expensive the food will be, we will consume it, won't we? No matter how much is the rent, we need a roof to live in, live under. We need to wear something. The bare necessities, the food, shelter, and clothing are something which somewhat, even though this is a very extreme example, that, hey, whatever is the price, demand is not reacting. But to some extent, we can find in our second, third, fourth thought, we can say that, yes, it's possible that something can be so insensitive. But otherwise, the slope can be a good indicator. Look at here. If you see this example, the leftmost example, look at the price jump and look at the change in the demand. Yeah. So for example, if hypothetically I draw a picture like this, the new one. So just notice, okay? So on y-axis, we take price, and on the x-axis, we take demand, right? So this is let's say this was the original price, D0, and this was the original demand, let's say D0. Please notice, please pay attention to the whiteboard, otherwise you will miss out. There's a big decline in the price. But even though there's a big decline in the price, the increase in demand is comparatively less. You see that? So for the P0 and D0, the point of interaction is this. For P1 and D1, the point of interaction is this one. And if I plot them together, then this is how the demand curve look like. If the demand curve has this type of shape, which is very slopey, not sloppy, but slopey, slope. Can you see the slope? Then you can make some kind of generalization that in this case, demand is less elastic. And it's so visible. Look at that. It's a big jump, or it can be big fall, doesn't matter. It's a big change in price, but correspondingly, there is a very small change in demand. On the contrary, we have price here, we have demand here. The price is P0, demand is D0. The price falls very minimal. I call it P1 because it's so small, yeah. But the demand jumps to D1. For the first point, the locus or the point of interaction is here. For the P1 and D1, the point of interaction is here. And when you join them, assume it's straight line. Demand curve is this. Can you see the difference? The slope is less. The slope is almost like you can walk. If you assume that it's a ramp, it's almost you can walk. This is impossible to walk, so because the slope is more. So here, all else being equal, we will say that the price elasticity of demand is more than 1, and here it's less than 1. So the slope of the demand curve can also give you a first point of thoughts that is this demand less elastic or more elastic.
The demand absolutely inelastic. Doesn't mean that the number is 0.
Yeah, because there's no change. So when the demand curve is like this, it doesn't make any change. Price goes up, price goes down, doesn't make any change. And when the price is ultra hyper sensitive, then it will look like this. This is almost unrealistic, but still we have to think. But the other shapes, especially this and this, are the most realistic ones, if I can say so. Make sense? All right, so we move on. I hope I'm recording here. So this is something you can see that I brought about a bit of more interaction between demand and supply. So you can see that sometime there is a change in the equilibrium. So this is nothing more but just a kind of practice. Remember we discussed last week interaction between demand and supply, did we? But if the demand supply curve change, we would reach new equilibrium points. Make sense? So originally this was the demand curve, the blue line. And S1 was the original supply curve. And the equilibrium was here. OP1 was the price. OQ1 was the quantity demanded and supplied in the market. But what happened that the demand curve changed. But can I ask you one thing? When you compare this blue demand curve and the green demand curve, has demand become more elastic or less elastic than before? Yes, we have a question to discuss. Sorry. When you compare the original demand curve DD and the new demand curve D1, the green one, do you see any change in the elasticity of demand? It has become more or less? More elastic because slope has declined. Yeah. How about supply curve? Well, nothing much has changed because I deliberately put them equal. But the point I'm trying to make here is that This was your original equilibrium. And now your new equilibrium is this one, right? Because this is your new demand curve and the new supply curve. And this is the new equilibrium. Remember, the equilibrium keeps changing. And if you remember last week's example, I took you to the stock market and we saw the graph changing every minute. That is a proof, the real life evidence that demand supply keeps changing every moment. And this equilibrium is never static. This equilibrium price is never static. And if it is static, it is artificially static. And it doesn't last forever. It will break up at some stage. I remember about USSR. When the Bolshevik Revolution came in 1917, led by my favorite Vladimir Ilyich Lenin, the prices remained same for many until late 80s. Some of the prices were held constant. Was the world not changing, dynamics? But when you put artificially, it's possible that you can go against the market mechanism. But the question is that how long? It depends upon you can keep it constant for the whole life, eternally, centuries, millennium. But then you have to have those economic planners who are so smart that they can keep it constant. The question is that how much or how far you can fight against the tide. You get my point? Especially when you live in a globalized era. If you are a country totally secluded from the rest of the world and you do whatever you want with the prices, quantity, it's fine. But when you start interacting with the others, then it's difficult to keep constant. So the point I'm giving you two examples. Stock markets, the prices are changing after every 5 seconds, you can notice. And then a country where the prices, not all, but many products, were kept constant for 70 years. Make sense? We have a lady who wants to ask something. Could you? Then come here. Okay, say then. I will repeat, folks.
Because I was so about what you said, that if there's some other things that can move demand more than price, because we thought.
Oh yeah, there are many other factors. Yeah.
That all the
Definitely.
others are equal than price.
Definitely.
But can there be like I think the COVID.
If your income changes, if your income increases, for example, so even though there is no decrease in the price, if you become wealthy, let's say you were doing earlier some part-time job, some small job, and suddenly you become the chief finance officer of Nokia. And now you're earning about, let me guess, you're earning about 10 million euros a year, right? What will happen then? But does the price fall? No. So that there we go. So yeah.
In generally,
Yeah. In generally, when in a society or in a country the living standards increase, demand is more elastic. As I said in a couple of weeks ago, example that whenever I go abroad now, and whenever I board in the flight, I see many Indian and Chinese travelers. Wherever, from where to where, doesn't matter, because people in those countries are finding their income going up, and they never traveled all their life, but now they get a chance to travel.
affect the demand more than price.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
I can say that.
Definitely. Yeah, because the prices are, of course.
But it breaks all the others are equal then. Because if I understood that all the other things than price cannot affect demand more than price.
But the other things can also affect the price. See this way. See this way. Demand for tea and the price of coffee. Coffee is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper all the people like me who were consuming tea addicts, they start moving eventually towards coffee. And now the tea company would start thinking, hey, what is happening? Our customers are going away. What they would do, they would also make the prices competitive so that the people can come back. So price affects the other things, and the other things also affect the price. But at a given point of time when we only study one thing at a time. Because of course we can study multiple things at a time, but that's the advanced stage of, precisely. There is a knock-on impact. We study the textbook of economics, but the life doesn't follow the textbook. But we still read textbook because it's a fundamental point of learning. Yeah. Okay, so please go through it. Now I think it's better I move to the new topic, but I give you a quick, short 5 minutes break. 5 minutes means exactly 5 minutes. Come back and we start learning monetary and fiscal policy of Finland. So for this today's session, the second part is very important, and we are going to discuss monetary and fiscal policy. I will try my best to cover as much as I can within 1 hour. But if something is left out, then no problem, because next time when we meet, we call it a revision session. But I can take easily first half an hour to explain more about it. So no rush, no pressures. So we go smoothly. In my thoughts, in a market economy, even if it is not a perfectly market economy, but still it has strong shades of market economy. The state controls. Remember, I think I mentioned to you that if I go by the Adam Smith's theory definition of the market economy, the state should not play any role in the economy. Remember the J.M. Keynes' words I used last week: the invisible hand will take care of everything. So if I go by the textbook definition of the market economy, then this should be the shape. This should be how the economic decisions are taken in the market. Folks, can you see the blank whiteboard?
Yes.
According to invisible hand, in which the state is absolutely missing, this is demand curve. This is supply curve. This is the price, which is a very important economic decision in the country, in the economy. The market demand, market supply meet decisions taken. If there is, in case there is a disturbance and the price goes more than what the price should be, then supply will be more. As you can see where the line moves, this much is a supply and this much is demand. And if there is a more supply than demand, we call it surplus. I think I used this word before, surplus. If there is an economic surplus, the price will automatically come down and reach the previous equilibrium. And in case the price is below what it should be, let's say P2, then you can see that the supply is this much and demand is more. So demand is more and supply is less. And if the demand is more, supply is less, we call it deficit, shortage, deficit, whatever you call it. We have less things available than demanded. Shortage is also a word. And if something is more in demand, less in supply, the price will jump up. till it reaches the equilibrium point where demand equals supply. This is how the free market economy functions in the purest form. But we know that there's no economy in the world which runs on purely market-based. I think I shared this figure with you that no other country than the USA can be labeled as the most free market economy oriented country. Even there, 25% of the GDP, national income, come from the state. So even in USA, the state is so active in the economic affairs. Okay, and in Finland, in Nordic, in Scandinavia, we live in a welfare state, and here there is no real free market economy. There is a market economy. I would say there's a managed market economy. Remember the example of taking care of the farmers and taking care of the consumers. So within that band, like this, within a very high price and low price, the market economy can work, but not beyond it. So there's a limit to this free play of demand and supply curves. Okay, we can discuss it's good or bad, that's a different thing. But in reality, the state is a very major player in the economic affairs. This is the background of monetary and fiscal policy. In my opinions, the state has two remote controls. Like I have this remote control. I have one, state has two. The one remote control is called monetary policy. The monetary policy is the policy. Maybe I explain it first and then I use the second, or I explain the second remote control, right? Not use, but explain it. The monetary policy is carried out through the actions of the central bank or any other monetary authority of the country. First of all, the government does not come visibly in monetary policy. Monetary policy traditionally is not run by any minister of the state. It's run by a technocrat, a professional. And that professional is the head of the central bank of the country. I'm not talking about those some kind of monarchies or where some king or emperor lives, or if the prime minister or president is too powerful, then he doesn't care about who's the head of the central bank of the country. But in a normal functioning democracies, the person who is more visible about the monetary policy statements is the head of the central bank of the country. So basically, the state is in the back seat in monetary policy. I shouldn't say state, I should say the government. Government is a part of the state. The state has other components as well. You get my point? The central bank is more visible. So in relatively more capitalistic countries, you will find that the monetary policy is more in picture than the fiscal policy. Anyways, monetary policy is run by the actions of the central bank, or sometimes there is a body called monetary authority, but more or less same thing, that controls the quantity of the money in an economy and the channels from which this money is supplied. So first of all, in the monetary policy, this authority, the central bank of the country, takes care of the supply of money. It increase supply of money, it decrease supply of money, depending upon the circumstances, and I'll explain them later on. Depending upon the need-based increase and decrease in the supply of money is undertaken by the central bank of the country. And it also determines that will it directly come in the picture or will it come through its other channels. Most often, the central bank doesn't show up so visibly itself. Mostly all the implementation of its desires, its policies, its strategies are done by the commercial banks. Commercial banks like Nordea, like OP, like Handelsbank, like Danske. These are the commercial banks. So these are the channels of implementing. So if one day you go to Nordea and you say that I want to borrow some money, and they say, all right, fine, pay 5% rate of interest. And you say, hey, what is this? Until yesterday, it was 3%. Why did you increase the interest rate? Then the manager of the bank would say that it's not me who increased the interest rate. The Suomi Pankki, the Bank of Finland, the Apex Bank, the head bank wants to charge more interest. I'm only doing what I'm told to do. Do you get my point? So monetary policy consists of management of money supply and the interest rate. Remember, a very important mechanism is the money supply and the cost of money supply. The cost of money is interest rate. Do you agree that the cost of money is interest? If you borrow, what is the cost? The interest, right? So the cost of money is that, and when you deposit money with the bank pays you what? Interest. Then that is a cost to the bank. So whichever way, the interest rate is representing the cost of money. If you are a borrower, it's a cost to you and income to the bank. But if you are a saver, then it's an income to you and cost to the bank. So interest rate is highlighting the cost of money. And what is the objective of the monetary policy? Very important. It wants to control inflation. It wants to control inflation. If the monetary policy is weak or ineffective or even, contradictory, then the country can become very much inflationary. And do you know the side effects of inflation? The side effect of inflation would be that the growth of the economy would be crippled. People would lose jobs, people would lose out, the factory would start shutting down. There would be lack of trust. Economy would be in a chaos. The value of your currency will go down. The prices would be beyond reach. Those people who borrowed money, they would be almost bankrupt. So it's very important for the monetary policy, the monetary authorities of the country to keep track of inflation. Monetary policy can be expansionary or contractionary, depending upon, it's like, as I said, that the monetary policy is like a remote control. It's like a fine tuning. You fine tune the economy. The head of the central bank of the country fine tune the economy. Expansionary, sometimes you make it expansionary. Expansionary means increase supply of money. Imagine a country is growing. People are investing. There is entrepreneurship. The foreign companies are considering, hey, this is a good country to invest in. So all the good vibes are felt, but the money supply doesn't change. If the money is like a blood in the body, okay? So if the body is growing, but the blood is not growing, or the blood circulation is very slow, it can retard, it can hamper the body. Same way, a growing economy needs growing money supply. And if the vibes are that economy is growing, then the central bank needs to follow the expansionary policy, means increase the money supply, but with a care. Too much money supply Too much blood circulation can cause high blood pressure. Same way, so the controlled, very controlled, okay? And if the market is shrinking, contractionary, if the market is contractionary, there is bad signs in the economy, GDP is falling, people are getting unemployed, companies are shutting down their businesses or they're moving away, but you have the same money supply. What does it mean? It basically means that the supply of goods are less, but comparatively, money supply is still more in the hands of people and the companies. What would happen? Inflation. Very good. So in that case, there has to be some additional money or liquidity. We call also money as liquidity because that's a liquid asset. It moves so freely. Then the monetary policy should be such that it sucks away, it takes away the extra, like a hoover. You are hoovering the economy and sucking away all the surplus liquidity. Not robbing people, but taking away the money from the people and the companies so that this excess of money supply can be taken away and this doesn't cause any inflation. Imagine a situation, a country is reeling under recession, factories closing down, very bad vibes. And then on top of that, people who are losing jobs, they also have to pay more price to buy the food. Come on, this is obnoxious. So this is where the wise people, economists, normally the people who run this show are the top economists and the finance people, PhDs and all the gurus who have done a lot of long career in some top universities and in top banks in the world, dealing with finance, dealing with economics, and now they are taking care of. Good that it's not in the hands of politicians. So it's more in the hands of professionals, the technocrats, okay? So depending upon the situation, they can follow expansionary or the contractionary policy. This is the background. So basically, keep in mind, monetary policy run by the state, but not by the government as such. In theory, the central bank of the country who runs the monetary policy, what happens to my, who runs the monetary policy should be autonomous, totally out of the control of the government. But let's accept the governments do influence the monetary policy, okay? And this contains the supply of money and the cost of availability of money. And the cost is called interest rate. The biggest agenda behind monetary policy is to check inflation so that economy is stable, growing, yeah, right? And there's more employment. Depending upon the situation, the monetary policy could be contractionary or expansionary. Money supply, how it works. Now let's discuss how this basically works. It works basically by many ways, but I would give only two examples. The first one is called open market operations. Now please listen carefully, it's very important. Open market operations. Do you know that we individuals or the companies, we invest in the state securities, the bills, the bonds? You see, the bonds, have you heard about it? There are some securities issued by the state. We buy them and the state pays us interest, okay? So we buy the bonds or the bills issued by the Bank of Finland. We also call them treasury bills, or sometimes we call them only T-bills. T means treasury. So we invest in the government assets, the government securities. Now imagine, if I'm the head of the central bank and I find that people in the country, people and the companies in my country have lots of money, and this too much money can lead to inflation, I will not wait for the inflation to happen. What would I do? I want to, no, wait a sec. Hold horses. I want to take this money away from you. But should I come and rob your pockets? No. I would start issuing the government papers where I declare that, hey, I, the government, the representative of the government, I want to borrow from my people, right? And you, the people and the companies, individuals and the company would borrow those bonds, will buy those bonds. And when you buy those bonds, what happens? You give me money. I give you a piece of paper and you give me money. And of course, I would pay you interest. Don't forget that. I'm not robbing your money. I'm not forcing you. It's your choice. I'm giving you offer. Hey, you have some surplus savings. Why you keep with the bank? Or why you indulge in unnecessary consumption? Why don't you give this money to me? I pay you interest. So what I'm doing, the central bank, is taking away the extra money from your pockets. Okay, this money I keep in my locker, and now the money supply has gone down in the market. And as a result, there's no fear of inflation. On the opposite, if I, the head of the central bank, feels that the market is growing, the economy is showing very good signs. As I said before, the growing economy needs growing money supply. But my people, my companies have less money supply. What would I do? I would do the opposite. I would start buying back the same securities which I sold you last year. Are you with me? When I sold these securities to you, you gave me money and I gave you a piece of paper. And if I want to increase supply of money, I would buy back. I say, hey, you bought from me 100 for 100 euros. I pay you 102 euros. Give it back. And you come, hey, it's a nice offer. You give the paper back to me and I give you cash. The money supplies increases. The blood circulation in the economy starts increasing. Simple. You don't have to be a PhD in finance to do it, but I'm just kidding. But the idea is so simple. The idea is so simple. So if there is a more supply of money than required, then central bank would do this suction process, like Hoover example, take away the extra money. Again, not by any force, but by choice, by issuing. We use the phrase when the state says, just a sec, it's very interesting. The state says this paper is called, in many countries, this paper is called, the security which I said is IOU. Does it make sense? IOU. What does it mean, IOU? Come on, what is O? O. Oh, I owe you money. I owe you money. So this piece of paper is basically a proof that, hey, my folks, take this piece of paper, give me money. Whatever is written, 100 euros, give me 100 euros. So primarily, I'm making a promise that I owe you, means I borrowed from you. So when the government is selling its bonds, bills to you and you buy it, technically the state is borrowing from you. Remember, the state is a very big borrower. In every country, state borrows money from its people and the corporates. Otherwise, how it would run its finances? Impossible. Okay, and when the state feels that now there's need for the people to use this money, then the state says, okay, this is IOU, give it back and take your cash. Thanks, but no thanks. So take your money back. Thank you very much for helping me out. And now I'm returning. It's like you return your loan back to the bank. So state borrowed from you, the state gives the money back to you, and you give the piece of paper to the state. End of the story. Make sense? So the basic mechanism is very easy. Open market operations. When the state comes in the market and start buying those assets from the state and the people, from the people and the companies, buying and selling, yeah, depending upon the situation. Right. The second mantra, the second mechanism which the state can use is called changing the reserve requirements. Reserve requirements. Reserve requirements. The reserve requirement is how to give the example. Imagine, let's start with this example. Let's say I buy a house from this lady. Would you sell your house to me? Will you?
Own house.
Well, let's imagine that you have a palace and you sell to me. Yeah.
Depends.
Okay. On the price. Okay. I give her cash. Yeah. And let's assume that she has enough cash to run her kitchen budget, so she doesn't need to spend that money. And she deposits this money with the bank. Let's call it Bank X. Okay. The money with Bank X has gone up because she said to the Bank X, hey, Mr. or Miss Manager of X Bank, I got this 10 million Shab has given me because he bought my palace. This money I want to keep with you, with the bank. Bank says, okay, no problem. Suddenly, bank's cash has gone up by 10 million euros up. Yeah. And then this gentleman approaches the Bank X. He wants to borrow. He wants to borrow. If the Bank X wants to at the direction of the central bank of the country, wants to expand money, it would put the reserve requirements low. Means for every deposit, for 10 million, it will keep 5% with itself. Yeah. 10 million, 5%, how much? And rest is lendable to this gentleman. Imagine he's asking for the same amount of money. But if the bank says, no, not 5%, but 10%, then he would get less money in the form of loan. You get my point? Or you want some more example? More example. I know it. I can read your faces. Let's say that the reserve is 10%. So any deposit worth 100 euros, which goes to Bank A, Bank A can lend how much? 90 euros. You get my point? Because the reserve requirement is 10%. And who said this reserve requirement? Who said this thing? Did they have a dream? No. The central bank of the country said, hey, 10% is the requirement. So it means every 100 euros come to the bank can lend maximum how much? I should say lend maximum 90. Maximum. Because you must keep 10% with you all the time. All the time, this Bank A should have 10% of each deposit with itself. But imagine, and then what happens? Let's say I borrow this 90 euros, right? Somehow the money will ultimately go to the bank again. And let's say this time 90 euros reach bank B. Then bank B can lend maximum. What is 10% of 90? 981 euros. Maximum the bank B can lend is 81 euros. For every deposit coming to bank, the bank will keep 10%. Okay. And once again, somebody borrow 81 euros, and again, after some rounds, money comes back to the bank. And then this 81 comes to the bank. And let's say it doesn't have to be a different bank. It can be even bank A and bank B, doesn't matter, but let's call it bank C. Then bank C can lend maximum 81%, 10% is 8.1, so 72.90 euros are lendable. Okay, now be careful. Let's say the central bank wants to expand. Why would it expand? Because there is a good vibes. People are investing, people are, there is more human talent. The foreigners are coming to the country, investing, more companies expanding, new product, whatever, all good things happening. Then the state needs more money supply injected in the economy, okay? If it wants to expand, it would decrease its cost. And here the cost is what? Reserve requirements. Reserve is keeping the, if you're a bank manager, then high reserve is shackling you, keeping you hostage from expansion. Okay, so what I would say, Miss Manager, good news, reserve requirement is now 5%. Now, if somebody deposit 100 euros, then maximum you can expand money is not 90, but 95. Again, this 95 comes somewhere, from somewhere, I don't know, but ultimately all money goes to banks, 95, and 10% of 95 is 9.50. 9.50, it will be now 85.50. But do you understand the philosophy, what I'm trying to say? When the state was following very strict monetary policy, you are able to generate 90, 81, and 72.90 in 3 rounds. But when the state is following more liberal, more expansionary monetary policy, the banks are able to generate, for the same period, they are able to generate more money, not 90, but 95. Next round, not 81, but 85.50. Third round, even more. So there's more money supply increase. And who is the intermediate here? Who is the middleman? The banks, the high street banks. Remember, the central bank doesn't talk to you one-on-one basis. But all the policies which are implemented by these high street banks, when you go to downtown, you see so many banks. So all those commercial banks are the ones who implement the monetary policy. So these are the 2 ways generally the bank is coming in the picture. First, it deals with buying and selling IOU, the certificates, or it can do via raising or declining the reserve requirements. Less reserve requirements means more expansion, and high reserve requirements means more contraction. Simple mechanics. Yeah. Questions about this example? Yeah. And then this was the supply of money. Remember, you have any questions? Yeah, you want to ask something? 0.90. Yeah, 81 minus 8.10. Yes, sir. Of course, the monetary policy of Finland is largely influenced by Brussels, by the ECB. Yes, that's true. No. Brussels gives you guidelines, but the magnitude can vary from country to country. Brussels would be angry if it says, hey, expand money. So decrease the reserve requirement and Bank of Finland increases it. Then there would be a lot of political, debates and, things like that. But if there is if you're following the same directions, it's fine. Brussels gives the guidelines. And then the central monetary authority have lots of role to influence. And same way, when you borrow from OP or Nordea, they don't charge same rate of interest. So there is some autonomy even available at the bank level as well. But if one bank is, when all the banks are decreasing interest, but one of them is increasing, then that raised brows, yeah. So that's possible. Some autonomy is possible. You following the guideline doesn't mean complete homogeneity. Some heterogeneity would remain always. Yeah. This heterogeneity is the autonomy, I can call it. Then comes the demand for money. After all, how can we only talk about supply of money? There has to be demand for money as well. In free market economy, all decisions are taken by demand and supply. So why in the monetary policy, we don't consider the demand for money? Well, we will do it now. Come on. Demand for money is demand for money. We all have demand for money. We keep money with us, don't we? We keep money with us. We don't invest everything. We still hold money with us. There is a theory. I will not go into it, but I will only tell you the gist of this theory. It's called liquidity preference theory. The liquidity preference theory says that people hold money. First of all, they have to buy and sell things. You want to buy your kitchen things and you need to keep some money with you. The second reason you keep some cash with you, some money with you, is that you are always afraid that just in case there is any emergency situation, okay, you must keep some money with you. When I say with money, doesn't mean in your pocket. It can be in the bank also, because you use your cards and checks and all that stuff. Yeah. But don't invest it. So these are the two main reasons why people are holding the money. Tell me something. When the price of a marker goes up, what happens to its demand? Or what should happen to its demand? It should go down. Same way, when the price of money goes up, and what is price of money? The interest rate. When the interest rate goes up, the demand for money should also come down. How it goes? I explained you now why it goes down or how it goes down. Imagine you have 1,000 euros with you, and there is 0% rate of interest in the bank. You keep your money with the bank, or you keep your money in your pocket, doesn't matter. But suddenly the bank raises the interest rate to 5%. What would you do? If you have 1,000 euros, which you can spend, go on holidays, eat every night in the restaurant and whatever, because you don't know what to do with 1,000 euros. Suddenly you come to know that the bank is offering us 5% rate of interest. Will it affect you? Will it affect you? What would you start doing? Because now you think that keeping money with the bank is more useful. Come on, 1,000 euros, 5%, you will get 50 euros a year. And if this 1,000 euros living with you, it's still 1,000 euros. So when the interest goes up and you still keep your money in your pillows, you hide the money in the pillows, then there is a cost of holding the money back. You're losing 50 euros a year for every 1,000 euros. So this is called what? This is called opportunity cost. Remember the word we used so many times? Opportunity cost. When the interest rate is 0, You keep money in your pillow or with the bank, doesn't matter. But as the interest goes up and you want to keep money still in your pillows, there is a cost. Cost of what? Cost of the interest income which you have sacrificed out of your neglect or whatever. So as the interest rate goes up, the demand of money, demand for money should go down. Why? Because why you keep the money with you? It's a high time to earn high interest. Keep the money with the bank and earn the interest rate. So because the opportunity cost of keeping the money with you goes up. Does it appeal to your mind or not? So the high interest rate, like the high price of the marker, makes you postpone the consumption of the marker. Same way, high price of money, that is high interest rate, makes you demand less money and rather keep this money with some deposit investment. Okay. Yeah, so this is how does this picture look familiar to you? Do you see the demand curve and supply curve? If I say that this is demand for the markers and this is a supply of markers, now you can ask me, Shab, why the supply curve is not upward sloping? I'll tell you why. And then we have the price of the marker here. Do you agree with me that the demand for money is downward sloping? Do you agree with me or not? Because high interest means less demand for money, and less interest means it doesn't make any sense if you keep, nowadays the interest rate is 0% or negative. There's no sense of saving money in the bank deposit. But just imagine that in the future, if the interest rate goes up, then you will think twice of spending money on unnecessary things. Because now you know that you can earn money from the bank. But why the supply of money is constant? Why it's elastic? Because, now listen this thing very importantly, at a given point of time, the supply of money is constant. Where does the supply of money comes from? This comes from the central bank of the country. And the central bank of the country does not increase the supply like this. If there are many suppliers of money, maybe it would look upward sloping. But because in this case, the supplier of money only one. And who's that? Central bank. Central bank, remember, the main objective of central bank is to check inflation. Therefore, it is super cautious in changing the money supply. So at a given, over a time, the supply of money can change, of course, but at a given point of time, in the short period, the money supply is usually constant. So therefore, you can see that the supply of money is parallel to y-axis, basically. Whatever is the interest rate, the supply of money doesn't change in the short period. I never said it never changes. I said it doesn't change in the short period. In the long period, it would change and it should change. But in a given period, the money supply is constant in the short period. Okay, so what happens? The demand for money is downward sloping and the supply of money is at a given point of time is constant, parallel to horizontal vertical axis. And here is the equilibrium, yeah? And what is it called? Equilibrium interest rate. It is called equilibrium interest rate. And this rate of interest is fixed by the state, not by the state, but the central bank, of course, state influences it. Okay, and if the state wants to expand, money supply, if this is the demand for money, I call it DM. And this is the supply of money in the market. Let's call it SM. Then the rate of interest would be this, R. But if the state wants to expand money supply, please tell me, if the state wants to expand money supply, will SM go right side or left side? Sorry? Right or left? Then the supply of money will go up. So it becomes SM1. And now the equilibrium is here. And now the new interest rate is what? R1. And now because the interest rate is low, yeah, it doesn't appeal you much to keep your money with the bank. You can see here that the demand for money has gone up. People want to demand more money and keep them in their pockets maybe, rather than with the bank. So this way, so if there is a supply of money is going this way, we can say that it's expansion. But if the state wants to contract, so if the supply of money goes other way around, then we call it contraction. We also call it, for example, expansion is injection of money, more injection of money, and contraction is more suction of money from the economy. So for a given demand for money, demand for money is, the curve doesn't change much because it depends upon people's habits. And generally the habits towards the money do not change. So the demand curve doesn't fluctuate much, but supply of money can be expanding or decreasing depending upon the situation to situation. Okay, so very quickly, if you have any questions, please ask me. Yes.
Like more money in their pockets, the interest in a percentage is growing. If people don't want to have money in their pocket, the interest is making like becoming lower.
Well, if people have too much money in the pocket, right, and the state want to shed them this extra money, then the state would increase the interest rate. So people think, hey, what is money doing in my pocket? Doing nothing. But if I keep the same money with the bank, I get more interest income. So then they give money to the bank. Yeah. Do we understand same thing? Yeah. And if the bank, same way, whenever the banks feel that, hey, we have so much money with us and there's no investment taking place, how should we discourage people from giving money to the bank? Then they lower the interest rate. So you don't find useful to keep money with the bank. Mm-hmm. This is why I'm saying that nowadays, when the interest rates are 0% or negative, it's not a good thing it's not something which you should do to keep your savings with the bank. Of course, you keep money with the bank, it's necessary for many reasons, but it's not a good investment. Yes. Sorry? Expansion?
Relates to high interest rate. Expansion condition.
Why we expand money?
No. Expansion relates to a high interest rate, the high interest rate.
Can you elaborate, because I'm not getting what you mean by relate.
Lower interest rates.
Look, I tell you something. The central bank of the country feel that this is the supply of money we have, and this R is the interest rate in the market. Okay. The central bank feels that people are investing. They want to invest in the country. They want to run their businesses. There are good vibes. The businesses would come to your country if the rate of interest is low, because rate of interest is a cost for them. If you're business, then the interest is a cost to you. At the same time, there's so much money which people demand because people want to expand the businesses. So then what they would do, they would increase supply of money. And when they increase supply of money, the interest rate will go down. And when the interest rate goes down, like price goes down, like price of the marker goes down, when the price of marker goes down, people want to buy more markers. So when the interest rate goes down, people want to borrow more money from the bank. So all the growing companies, they want to borrow. If you are a company, would you borrow more if the interest rate is more or low? Exactly. So when the interest rate goes down, you borrow more. You invest more money by borrowing from the banks. If you're a startup company, how can you bring millions of euros from your own savings? You have to borrow to expand your business. Make sense? Yeah. So any other question or comments? But on the other hand, I quickly, for the remaining time, I quickly take you to the central bank's website, which is here. I'll explain it next week, but anyways, let's, if I copy the link, and I will not forget that I have to share it with you. This is the monetary policy of Suomi Pankki, the Bank of Finland. The Bank of Finland is a part of Euro system, which is responsible for monetary policy and other central banks' tasks in Euro area and so on and so forth. But the thing which I want to, how is monetary policy carried out in practice? So this, you can also double check what I said to you, that how the monetary policy is implemented. I only talk about two things, the open market operations and the reserve requirements, okay? So you can double check if the bank is also saying the same thing, but I'm sure what bank must agree with me is that the central bank, if the people happens, if the central bank raises the key interest rate, the economy cools off and the inflation goes down. That's what we're discussing. And if the opposite happens, the central bank lowers the key interest rate and the economy picks up and the inflation goes up. So this is how the economy would be run by the central bank of the country. Why? This is the main agenda of the monetary policy. Why are stable prices important? So the central bank of the country wants to control inflation by all means. The biggest objective of any central bank in the world, I'm so happy that they explained so well here. It's like a textbook definition they're giving, that why it's important to have the stable prices. Means the prices shouldn't be like fluctuating too much, right? And the main and the most important objective of the single monetary policy is to maintain price stability. And this price stability would help the full employment and sustainable development. Sustainable development means long-term development. If the prices are moving up and down in zigzag, forget about sustainable development, there'll be no development. Because if I'm a business person outside Finland, wants to invest in Finland, and I see that the prices are going up and down, what would I do? I would never invest because I can't forecast my cost and revenue. But if I see that the price are stable over time, then I can calculate my potential cost and my potential revenue more authentically. So I can make a more educated guess. So that makes my life easier. Of course, there'll be some surprises, But I don't want to see the big surprises. But if I am planning to invest in some small island in some remote country where the price inflation can be 0% and sometime it can be 1000% a year, I would never invest in such country because that can be very bad impact. Stable prices. Look, stable prices makes your currency stable. And if your currency is stable, then the multinational companies would be very happy to either invest in your country or do some trading with you. They would love to do it. So it's not that you have the high quality products manufactured in your country, but you should also keep your currency exchange rate also stable. And you can never have your exchange rate stable if your price is not stable. If you are living in a country with high inflation, extremely fluctuating prices, the exchange rate would never be stable. So there is a separate section, inflation, deflation, what is inflation, hyperinflation. So I think I love this website a lot. It's even better than a textbook. So I strongly advise you that the link is there in the slides. Go through it. You will have some good ideas. Read about it. Don't touch fiscal policy yet. I would do next week. Okay. But go through the half of the slides which I shared with you, monetary policy, and then read this website, get some ideas. There'll be confusion. I call it positive confusion. Next week, we have some discussion about it. And then for the remaining time, we will discuss fiscal policy very fast. And if you have any questions, comments, then we will take that as well. Okay. So good luck to you and see you next week. And enjoy the sunshine. Take care. Anything in the chat, Tatiana? Ah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We'll meet next week.